Hey everyone, it's March 18th, 2018, and this is your episode 138 of Percussion. I'm your host, Casey Kengelissi, and with me as usual are Laurel Black.
Hi.
And Ben Charles.
Hi, everybody.
Megan Arns is here. She'll be coming in just a little late, so we'll say hey to her in just a bit. So you guys, our guest today has made a career for himself by commissioning and premiering over 100 new works. He's worked with composers such as David Lang, Steve Reich, Paul Lansky, John Luther Adams, Glenn Kochi, and Sofia Gubatalina, just to name a few. He's a member of the Meehan-Perkins duo, so that's Todd Meehan from a few episodes ago, and he's an original founding member of the So Percussion Quartet. He's part of the percussion faculty at the Boston Conservatory, where both Laurel and I attended, and he's currently the interim chair of instrumental studies there, as well as a percussion teacher. So, hey, and welcome to Doug Perkins. How's it going?
Really great. Thanks for having me. It's good to see you guys.
Yeah, sure. You're really, really welcome. What's happening with you lately?
A whole lot, I guess. Personally, as I told you before, I'm doing a lot of science homework with my 10-year-old today.
Nice.
We're learning about Newton's laws. But professionally, Boston Conservatory is going well, but crazy. That whole agreeing to be the chair thing is a little nuts.
Why did you do that?
It's a great question. I'm an idiot who says yes to a lot of stuff.
One of those.
Which has gotten me into many great situations in my life. But there was a moment when I was flying to Montana in September to play with Todd, actually, and got this call from the dean about doing this job. And it was one of those phone calls where I kept trying to say no. And they kept saying, yeah, that's fine, but you'll do the job, right? So then I broke down and said yes. So I'm going to do it for this year. I don't think I'll do it past that because it's been great and been fun to help your alma mater out. And I think I've done some fun stuff, but it's also fun to hit things and travel around and be creative. So I think I'm probably going to revert to that after the year.
I somehow imagine Nancy, say like, oh yeah, Doug's the chair. What's that like? And Nancy just sitting back, looking evil with a glass of wine, saying like, he likes to think he has power, but we know who has the real power.
No, she's been actually really great about it, and it's her fault, I think, that I'm the chair. I think she was walking into all the meetings being like, he would be the best. I just think he'd be the best. But it's been really good. She has actually been a pretty great supporter of mine. But it was funny the day I was like, wait, I think I'm your boss now. We've handled it pretty well, and I'm pretty grateful to how she's done her part of allowing me to be a good leader.
Yeah, sure.
Good job, Nancy.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, we do have a little list of Facebook questions, and this is one from Pat Joyce, who we actually don't get this question a whole lot with our guests, and it's simply, where and when did you first fall in love with drums? That's
my godfather.
Okay, cool.
I laughed when I saw that this morning. He's a very proud godfather. His son is a comedian. This guy Jesse Joyce.
Okay.
So similarly, like my cousin will write, we'll do some he writes for the Oscars and stuff. And I'm always impressed that he'll be writing these professional things, and then Pat Joyce chimes in like, "God bless you, son. We're very proud of you." So he's very supportive in all ways. But I can answer that question, which is great.
Sure.
How did I fall in love with percussion? I feel like, I was originally a sax player, and I sucked. I really sucked. So bad that my mom came in my room in the end of 5th grade and was like, "Hey, bud, what else do you want to play?"
Hey, bud.
This reminds me. Have you guys ever seen the Eddie Izzard middle school band thing? If you just go on YouTube, look up Eddie Izzard middle school band, and he talks about this thing. He says, "Stop practicing. You sound crap."
Laurel, that's the guy you like.
Yeah, I like Eddie Izzard.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so I was really crappy at sax, and then she let me pick anything else. So I picked the drums. And then Yeah, I guess I just really liked it. I was like a rock drummer for a long time. Really enjoyed just being a drummer and kind of wanted to move to LA and be like in the Red Hot Chili Peppers, like, just follow them around and wait for Chad Smith to get sick. But my parents made me, well, it's hard to say because at the same time, so a couple funny things happened. Like I was really into it and enjoyed playing and, I was in my basement banging on stuff. But then at some point I went to school with Brett Dietz. I don't know if you know Brett, but he was a senior when I was a freshman. And so because of Brett, I had to learn the bass guitar because he had all the good drum spots in bands and stuff. So I had to learn the bass, but it got me access by playing the bass to playing in lots of good things at our school. And then through that, we had like this fine arts fancy pants program where I met this guy, Jack Deaney, who became my drum teacher. And in a funny way, like this dude just showed up at my middle school one day and gave me a tambourine lesson and made me feel really stupid. And then he was like, "You're my student now. Tell your parents you're my student." I was like, and I literally just went home and was like, "Mom, this guy Jack's my teacher now," he said.
He also offered me some candy, told me to get in his van.
Kind of creepy. But great. So like I think he's the one who sort of like gave me my first opportunities and cleaned me up and sort of turned me into a percussionist, a proper timpanist and cymbal player and, all of that kind of stuff. So I think, through high school and, and the opportunities he gave me playing around Pittsburgh and things, I think is what gave me the love for it. And then my parents were sort of like, you have to go to a real music school that's attached to a college. So I ended up at Cincinnati because my parents weren't so psyched about like, God bless to Berklee, who my school just merged with. But my parents were like, "You're not going to somewhere like Berklee and to play drum set." So I ended up going to be a proper percussionist.
So you just mentioned Berklee. Have you been at Berklee and Boston Conservatory? They've merged since Laurel and I went to school there. And I imagine a lot of people ask you about the merger. Have you been there long enough to see them separately and now see them together?
Yeah. Well, it's been a process. Like I've been there 3 years and it's kind of been happening all of the 3 years that I've been there. Yeah, it's good and confusing and frustrating and good and confusing.
Sure.
For the conservatory, what's really great is you guys were there, like some years ago, like a decade ago?
Yeah, I was there. I was there like a decade ago. Yeah, 2000. I graduated in 2004, so 2005. I was there 2006 and 2007.
Okay, so it was like a scrappy joint when you were there, I imagine.
Oh yeah, we didn't even the first year we didn't have the 1260 building yet, which I don't even think you have anymore, right?
Right, we've moved beyond that.
Yeah.
So like it's cleaned up, it's become good. We have new buildings. It has Berklee has sort of helped make it even less scrappy. And then like Berklee owns the whole neighborhood, has tons of resources, and is this big behemoth of a place. So that's been really great. And we have a lot more access to a lot of things, and there's stability that there wasn't before. So I say it's kind of interesting to be at a school when most schools are contracting and worrying about holding on to things from shrinking. We're like fighting this crazy expansion. So it's interesting in that way, but also like the thing that's hard and we work all the time with is like, how do we keep it feeling like Boco and keeping it having that personality inside of this bigger institution? And I think that's like the thing I've been working on a lot as a chair, and then working with incoming people, explaining if you come to the conservatory, what you get.
Yeah.
Because we definitely do get some people that get confused in the process. So we're trying to figure out how to be better at telling people about that.
Yep. Laurel, do you have a question for Doug there?
Yeah, so I know with the new buildings and the merger and the loss of 1260 and the kind of crappy situation that Boco was in before, New Music Gathering is going to be there this May. And I'm wondering if you have anything to do with that, or are you performing? Are you going to be around? Yeah.
Great question. Yeah, I have a little to do with it, but actually not so much other than general excitement. That's primarily being handled by Jonathan Bailey Holland. But I think we're pretty psyched to have everybody. It's great to be hosting that for a few days and get everybody in to see our buildings and see what we're doing.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to play. I have to look. It was like I have a couple of projects in New York in May, but then our students are doing a few events. And so the other day I started getting text messages from my students being like, you want to play this piece with us? And now.
Isn't it funny how they all sound like that? That's exactly how ours sound.
Except they sound like that for me. Todd's students, though, being Southern, they sound like Dr. Mean.
Dr. Mern.
Quick question. That's my Texan student, but otherwise they have that all down.
That's good.
Yeah, so I may be playing. I'm at the point of like having to look at my calendar and then go find my wife and be like, "Hey, babe, I'm gonna be out of town." But maybe I'll just bring my son and he can hang out. He likes coming. There's actually right across from our new building. So in Boston Conservatory, there's the new building. Have you been to our new building, Laurel and Casey? Have you been there yet?
No, it's on Ipswich, though, right?
On Ipswich, like basically right across from Fenway.
Yeah.
But
I haven't.
also across from a place called Jillian's that has lots of video games.
Yeah.
So,
Where is that in proximity to the Machine?
Machine?
Oh, is it
Like
not there
a block
anymore?
away. You don't know the Machine, Doug?
No, what's the Machine?
Oh no, the Machine. Oh, the Machine. it was a gay bar, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It was right. It was right
Yeah.
next to 1260. There was 1260.
Oh, yeah. I think
okay.
that whole block
So
changed.
so there's Fenway Park. I know it's not like this anymore. There was Fenway Park. Then across the street was 1260, which was a nice building. It was a really nice practice building. And then there was a porn shop, and then the Machine. So you go,
And then a liquor store.
and then a liquor store. So you go to like meet the, come to a campus tour day, and they'd have a little sign outside of 1260 with like balloons, blue and green, Boston Conservatory, come parents, come students, porn shop, gay bar, liquor store.
That's that neighborhood is different now. But
Sure.
It's now all like high rises.
Yeah.
Really?
Fancy high rises and yeah, that block, there is still some bars there, but they're like sports themed, but there's more like it's like a ramen shop, like fancy pizza, a cool Portland oyster place. Yeah, there's still under 1260 is like the saddest thing is like one of those like student mattress shops.
Yes.
It's like buy a $20 mattress that will break tomorrow. That's sort of the holdover. And there used to be, when I first went, I went to school to do a master class, and there was Froyo under 1260. And I remember that Nancy wore all purple that day, as she sometimes does, and I think even ordered like purple Froyo. So, like, I just remember being like, this feels right somehow. But the Froyo, my first taste of Froyo is gone. Okay, there's better things now.
Things have changed. Well, you guys, let's give Doug a little break from talking. I do have a sound prepared for you today, and I've been thinking really hard about the hint. I don't really know what a good hint is, but I think what I'll say the hint is famous laser sounds. So see if you can figure out what this sound is. So, as always, I hope those came through okay. Any guesses?
It sounds like video game noises to me.
It does sound like video game noises.
I think it's an ice. I think it's a lake, like an ice lake.
Wow, you're spot on. You guys, Justin Alexander for the win.
Yes.
Yeah, way to go. This is good. This is the second guest in a row we've had nail it. Justin, how do you know that?
I think I just saw within the past 2 weeks, I think I saw a video of a guy skating on really thin ice with some, I don't remember how they mic'd it up, but I do remember watching that video, and that's what it sounded like.
Wow.
So you're exactly right, and that's actually where I was introduced to the sound as well. And yeah, there was a Facebook video going around from National Geographic, and that was the last batch of the 4 sounds. So I took 4 sounds that are created by a frozen lake. The first one was a rock being just chucked into the middle of the lake, the ice breaking, splash, and you get this bam laser sound that comes out. The second one was the same guy, but skipping a rock across the surface of the frozen lake, so across the ice. And then the third one, which is kind of the most astounding of the 4, I think, is just the lake by itself. So as the temperature changes, there become little breaks in the ice, and that makes a percussing in the ice, and then the same effect happens. And then the last one, like Justin totally guessed, this is Nordic skating, also known as wild skating. The sound of ice skating on very thin black ice in Sweden, which I guess is a fairly common activity in some Nordic countries, that one being from Sweden, where they wait for the ice to be just the right amount of thin, about as thin as is safe, and I don't think it's very safe. They do it in teams, and they take all sorts of precautions, but they skate on the really, really thin black ice, and part of what they're going for are those sounds. They enjoy hearing the sounds, and that's part of the, I guess, the whole experience. So great, that's exactly what the sounds are. Anybody have an idea why it sounds like this?
Will you play them again?
Yeah, sure. So that's the splash. That's the skip. That's the natural bending, just the lake by itself. And here's the skating. So it's a pretty weird phenomenon that this happens. And it's because of an acoustical property called acoustic dispersion. So there's a new term for y'all. So acoustic dispersion is the phenomenon of a sound wave separating into its component frequencies. So the way this works, we'll take the first one, for example, you chuck a rock into a frozen lake, it breaks through the ice, it's going to make a sound, right? Just like the water would ripple, the sound's going to ripple out. So imagine from the center, you've got all the components of that sound, but the ice basically filters the frequencies so that the high frequencies get to your ear first, and the low frequencies are behind, which is the same reason which is the reason why it has a bending effect to it. It glisses downward on all of these sounds. They always go high to low. So this will really change. If you're too close to the point of impact, you won't get this effect. It has to do with the distance. There has to be enough distance between you and the point of percussion in order for the sound to filter through the ice. So, and you can imagine it's the same reason someone's voice sounds different underwater. And the famous laser sound that this relates to is none other than the Star Wars laser sound effect. So they didn't use ice, but they did use acoustic dispersion. Supposedly what they did is they went to a radio tower where there's a giant cable going far into the, to the top of the tower, about hundreds of feet up, and they smacked the cable with a wrench and put the microphone to just the right place that they got the high frequencies first. So the cable disperses the frequencies and divides them up so that they don't arrive to the microphone all at the same time. So we can demo this real easy. I can give you a little example. So I just recorded myself saying my voice being split into its component frequencies, and then I played with that recording on a little filter on my DAW. So this is called a sketchable filter, and what you're seeing is a graph of all the frequencies from low to high. Okay, so the left end is the low and the right end is the high, as you'd expect. And then the red line just it maps the filter of what the computer is going to pass through. So the first one is totally flat. There's no editing to it. The second one, you can see the high end or the low end is boosted, so on and so forth. The fifth one, only the high end is there. So you can hear just the different frequencies coming out of what's being said. So here you go. My voice being split into its component frequencies. 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 So just like you're telling a computer, hey, filter out these certain frequencies of the sound wave, the ice is naturally doing the same thing, and that's called acoustic dispersion.
Cool.
That's super cool.
Yeah. Why is it that... So when you said laser sounds, it made me think of that guy that can make all the robot sounds. What's his name? Michael.
Yeah.
Michael something.
Michael Winslow.
Slow.
Winslow. Thank you. And then it got me thinking about how come it seems like most boys can make like lots of gun and laser sounds, but like my laser sounds are pa-choo, pa-choo, and that's about it.
Oh, it's because we grew up playing Cowboys and Indians and
That's why.
rockets and yeah.
Cowboys and Indians have lasers.
Cowboys have lasers.
If you ever go to a party and you ask everyone to make their laser sounds, it's a good icebreaker
Idea.
That's a good one.
because they're like snowflakes. Those laser
That's a good one. Very good.
I want to play laser sounds.
Hey, there was a question about
I think-
laser tag, actually.
I will get to that, but my laser sound I think is pew pew.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Ben, laser sound?
Yeah, what's your laser sound?
I think it's like
Oh,
It's like the Star Wars one. Yeah.
Ben says distance. It sounds.
Yeah, that's mine. Yeah. Megan?
What do you got?
Pew, pew.
Terrible.
Nice.
I did play Cowboys and Indians, unfortunately. So, no
Just-
laser.
Good. Justin?
Mine's like Ben's, I think. It's
Pew, pew.
That's like mine. Yeah.
You guys
I
art filter, that's nice. You really.
have a
you're trying-
good jet flying by. That's my jet
Oh,
flying.
that is good.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah,
I've
we
never
play
heard you do
laser
that
tag a
before.
lot, and there's a group Signal that I play with, and in Signal, we do a lot of gigs in Buffalo, and in Buffalo, there's a 2-story laser tag place like right next to the hotel.
Story laser tag place?
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. So like, so we frequently, anytime there's a gig, the whole band gets together and plays laser tag. And if you haven't as an adult, it gets really intense. And there have been times I have like chased down 10-year-olds with like sweaty and like, it gets pretty real in there.
Yeah.
And then my son also is a big laser tagger. He spent yesterday playing laser tag. And I can tell you that just the technology, there's some pretty crappy laser tag in the world, but these days now there are also like these tactical laser tag places where there's like vehicles and little city centers. It's a thing.
We did a studio hang at a laser tag place one semester, and it really set the tone for the rest of the semester. I mean, it was pretty intense.
Yeah.
But, sorry this doesn't relate to your topic, Casey. I'm going away from laser tag. Have you guys done an escape room yet?
No.
I haven't.
Or heard of it?
Heard of it, yeah.
Yes, I have not done one either. I just made it sound like I had, but I have not. But I want to. They sound really cool.
Sorry, escape room?
Escape room.
Escape room. What is that? I don't know what it is.
So I guess you go into this place and you have to basically figure out how to get out with a team. So I think they're set up in different ways, but you can only do it once. You can only solve it once. So it's pretty in depth, and they think they change.
Yeah.
Based on so it's a thing to like go to other cities and find their escape rooms, and I think the ones that have them do change every few months or something like that. Yeah.
My students are always trying to get me to play Rocket League. Do you guys play that?
I've never heard of that.
It's a video game, but they're into Rocket League. I mean, I'm into it. I just, I'm not brave enough to play with them yet.
Yeah, I'm kind of too old for video games. Like my son's doing Fortnite these days.
Oh yeah.
But once a week I'll go down and grab the controller and Like it sometimes gets bad enough. He's like, it's good, Dad. Good. You did good. Like, no, I didn't, buddy.
He wants you to play. He's trying to get you to play.
Yeah, he's very sweet, but I suck.
Oh, that's good. My colleague talks about playing the Portal games with his son because there's a co-op, and you, like Megan said, you solve these puzzles together, and they're really, really creative and really, really thought out, and you have to work together really, really hard. And he says he enjoys it just as much as his son. It's like, yeah, it's cute.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah. So let's bring some sanity back to this thing. Does anybody have a real question?
I do. Well, let's start with something specific. So Chosen Vale, which is your Summer Percussion Institute. I'd love for you just to talk about it, but I'm really interested on how you go from having an idea like that, like this huge idea that I'm sure a lot of people have, these big dream projects, into actually making it happen.
If I could tack onto this question, also if you could explain the name, because I've never known what the name means.
Good series of great questions.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, it's a couple things, like the taking things from big dreams to reality. Like going back to the first thing, I think I've a lot of times just said yes to anything and tried to make things reality. And like the biggest one being, nice. That's cute. Where did the name me and Perkins go? Really funny.
Damn it, this is the messiest episode on planet Earth. I'm going to have so much editing to do.
No, it's going to be wonderful. Leave it in. So good.
Oh, it's terrible.
So, yeah, bringing in the starting So Percussion was a big, horrible, messy thing to start. And sort of after getting that up and running, other things seemed easier. And so then after that, I kind of had started a number of big, dumb things. So by the time I got to Chosen Vale, it felt like it made sense. And I had a lot of help with that in that before Chosen Vale Percussion Seminar, there was a Chosen Vale Trumpet Seminar run by a colleague of mine, Ed Carroll, up at Dartmouth. It was when I was teaching at Dartmouth. But we were having coffee one day, and he was like, I have this trumpet thing. Would you want to do a percussion thing? And I said, yes, of course, no problem. And so then we started kind of from there. But we already, based on his trumpet seminar, we already had a sense of a little bit of a structure. We also, so kind of weren't starting from nothing from that. But then the title, Chosen Vale, is it's the name the seminar happens in New Hampshire at an old Shaker village. We kind of take over an old Shaker village in this valley, which they called their Chosen Vale. So it's like the Shakers were drawn to this thing. So Chosen Vale refers to the place in the valley where we did it. But yeah, so just starting it was like, let's say yes, and then tried to pick in the first year, and then every year after, just tried to pick as interesting a faculty as possible. And so like that first year was mostly terrifying of like convincing Steve Reich and Dan Druckmann and people like that to work for me. But it's easier now. So it's kind of transformed also quickly. Amy Garapic was very involved from the beginning and has a big hand in making sure it happens from year to year. I guess our vision is trying to get everyone to play for each other all day. So when you come to Chosen Vale, like in the morning, we have open lessons all day. So anyone can go to anyone's studio and play whatever they want. In the afternoon, we all play chamber music. And then at night, we either play concerts or do performance classes. And then in between, what's cool living in this village is there's really nothing to do there. It's like super boring. So we just have each other to hang out with. We all live together under a same building. So like faculty live with students. And we all eat together and cook together. So a couple things happen. One, quickly we all everyone has to play for everybody all day. So sort of it breaks down a lot of the barriers of like people trying to hide what they're bad at. Everyone's pretty exposed. Their strengths and their weaknesses are exposed. And hopefully my goal at the end of it is you figure out the person who came in worried that they're a weak player might leave realizing that they're good at building teams or good at chamber music, or are respected for different things. And that person that came in as the marimba superstar might actually only know 3 pieces and might be terrible at making friends and realize that no one wanted to talk to him until he, helped refill their dinner plates and said something nice once in a while. So in some ways I think of it as like, we come in talking about repertoire music, but hopefully leave like talking about citizenship and trying to be better and inspire humans, I think.
Cool.
That was a lot of talking.
No, it's awesome. I loved hearing you say that your vision was to get everyone to play for each other all the time. And I'm just curious if that was how much you've seen the festival or the camp change over the years that you've been doing it, or if it's mostly stayed the same. Because the students or the people that I've known that have gone and my students that have gone, I think the biggest thing they come away raving is that I was playing the whole time, and I got to meet all these awesome people and I got to play for all these awesome people and I got all this information to come back and work on. And I think there are a lot of camps out there where, you just listen to master classes and take notes, but you don't actually get to put it into practice. And so I think you've done this amazing job of creating this environment where, everything that you said, where they're playing all the time and they kind of break down the walls and you're exposed to different things and people aren't judging you all the time, which I think sometimes happens at summer festivals. So I guess my question is, have you felt the festival change through the years you've been doing it, or has it mostly been the same from the beginning, which is awesome if it is?
I think if it's only changed, I think we've given up trying to control it even more. I feel like in the first year, like I think Amy and I talked about every little like motion of everyone's stick every day and wondered if that would be the right thing to do. And by now we're kind of like, yeah, we trust the people that are coming. It's going to be fine. And they're sort of like I think now we're even more open to possibility, or just like there's no one right piece of repertoire that's going to make this year the best year, but more like as long as I think we know that if we keep to the values and keep to the positive energy and to remaining open, I think we just like rely more heavily on that. Mm-hmm. So I was hanging out, I had to hang out with the executive director of Silk Road Ensemble the other day.
Cool.
It was really fun. But we had this conversation that we kept talking about how like, if you come into something with like a strong sense of like ideas of vision of what you want people to get from kind of like in citizenship or in vision, like the choice of repertoire doesn't matter so much if everyone's like world vision is the same.
Yeah.
I think like if we're into like helping each other and sharing and being open and creative, then like whether it's Cangelosi or Fernie Howe, it matters less, I think. Mm-hmm. Talking about in the moment, or like, because we're just teaching, because so much of the repertoire also is like we're teaching agency and like, do you have ideas? Do you believe in your ideas? Why did you play this piece? Why did you have the idea? Why did you come here? What are you doing with your life?
Yeah. And that's interesting that you're having that conversation with the Silk Road director too, because a lot is like at the Global Musicians Workshop, isn't that a lot about creating the repertoire rather than playing repertoire, but rather using the people to, or the musicians themselves are the ones that are creating the repertoire, improvising.
Right. And like, why are you playing music? And as long as you know why you're playing music and why you're in the room, and I think like they're doing it so that they can understand each other and accept people coming from other places. And so then, it becomes less about like, was that 3 strokes or 4 strokes?
Yeah.
Although that's very important also.
I think that's like encouraging also for people teaching at universities, right? When you're choosing, I have such a hard time choosing repertoire for percussion ensemble concerts, and just mostly because there's so much out there. And then also getting things to fit in within a theme and like just letting go a little bit. And, I don't know. I think I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I'm sure others do too. We've had this conversation on the podcast before, but making sure everyone's played historical music and new music, and that everyone's getting an even chance to play. And it's hard to like think of all those factors.
Yeah. it just helps me let myself off the hook at least. Like,
I'll take that also.
Ben, what do you have for us today?
Yeah, well, last week Megan talked about Bang on a Can, and we talked about David Lang on episode 73 with Steve Schick at length. So I wanted to talk about the other two Bang on a Can composers, and also partially because I think the only time I've ever seen Doug play live was at PASIC when he played XY, so I want to get to that and hear about Doug's experience with that piece. But just a quick sort of bio of Julia Wolfe and Michael Gordon and a bit about their music. Julia Wolfe was born December 18th, 1958 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She studied piano as a teenager, but it sounds like she didn't really take it as a serious course of study until she got to college at the University of Michigan, and she took a musicianship course. She ended up graduating from Michigan with a BA in music and theater, and she spent the next couple of her years writing music for an all-female theater troupe. At some point, she took a trip to New York, at which point she became friends with Michael Gordon and David Lang, who were both recent Yale graduates, and they encouraged her to apply to Yale, so she ended up getting accepted and studying at Yale for her master's degree in 1984. And in that same year, she married Michael Gordon. Some of her sort of honors as she's gone through time, she studied in Amsterdam on a Fulbright scholarship, which Megan also talked about Fulbright scholarships, in 1992. She received a PhD in composition from Princeton in 2012. She is a professor of music composition at the NYU Steinhardt School of Music, and she's a 2015 Pulitzer Prize winner for her work Anthracite Fields. Her percussion works include, this first one's not technically a percussion work, but it might be of interest. It's called East Broadway from 1996 for toy piano and audio playback. I know there are a lot of toy piano fans in the percussion community, so someone's probably played that at some point as a percussionist. In 2012, she wrote a work called Dark Full Ride for percussion quartet. It's for 4 drum sets, and basically it sounds like they were playing around with cymbals on David Cossen's drum set, and she liked the sound of the hi-hats and the ride cymbals in particular. So I think it's the first 7 minutes of this piece is just hi-hat, and obviously the name of the piece, Dark Full Ride, she saw printed on one of the Zildjian cymbals. That's a Zildjian title of a cymbal. This is another non-strictly percussion work, but I wanted to mention it. In 2009, she wrote a piece called Traveling Music for 100 plus musicians of any type, and it was a collaboration with 2 architects, and there was a little blurb about it on her website, but not a whole lot of information, so it might be interesting to go down that rabbit hole at some point. And then last but not least, there's a piece called Rise and Fly from 2012. It's a body concerto for percussion, is what she calls it, which didn't really quite make sense because there is actually percussion playing in it. It's not just body percussion. It was written for Colin Currie and the BBC Concert Orchestra. Michael Gordon was born July 20th, 1956 in Miami Beach, Florida, and at a young age his family moved to Nicaragua, where he lived until he was 8 when he moved back to Miami. He grew up playing in underground rock bands, which has heavily influenced his compositional style, and I just kind of perused his list of works and a few little rock references where he has a piece called Paint It Black, he has a piece called Sunshine of Your Love, and he has a piece called I Buried Paul, all sort of obvious rock and roll influences. Along with his formal training, which was, as I mentioned previously, at Yale, where he studied with Martin Bresnik. And his percussion works of interest are XY from 1997, which was commissioned by Evelyn Glennie, but actually premiered by Steve Schick. And Steve Schick talks about that piece in his book, The Percussionist's Art, if you want to read more about it. Steve Schick says it was a very difficult piece for him to learn, and it took him about 4 months to learn it. So if it's difficult for Steve Schick, it's probably difficult for anyone. Timber from 2009 was written for 2 groups. One is Mantra Percussion. The other group is called Slagwerk Den Haag, which is Percussion The Hague. I looked it up on Google Translate. And that's a percussion sextet written for 6 wooden samantras, which are basically 2x4s placed on stands. And it sort of reminds me a lot of X and Y in that its textures sort of blending in and out and polyrhythms. And then in 2016, he wrote a piece called Material, which was written for the two percussion, two piano group called Yarn/Wire. It's a 65-minute work for that instrumentation, two pianos and two percussion. And it's kind of funny to me that whenever anyone tries to write a companion piece to the Bartok, it seems like they always end up with this massive work that you could never actually pair with the Bartok because the concert would be 2 hours long or something. So those are the percussion works of Julia Wolfe and Michael Gordon. And like I said, Doug, I know you performed XY, so I'd love to hear you talk about learning this piece and performing it and any of these others that you've had experience with.
Yeah. Well, first, so I saw Michael on Friday night in Chicago. I heard an amazing new piece of his called Anonymous Man for a choir called The Crossing. And it's really amazing, and everyone should check it out. And one of the sweetest things, so it's all about his life in his loft in New York. And a couple funny anecdotes or fun anecdotes are his rock band when he moved to New York was called Peter and the Girlfriends. And Peter was the girl singer, and the girlfriends were all the dudes playing the backup in the band. He also sold porch swings for a year. He ran a porch swing store in Manhattan, which some guy from Mississippi apparently. Yeah, he said some guy was on a sabbatical from teaching in Mississippi and just loaded a truck full of porch swings, rented a store space, and Michael sold porch swings. I don't know. But the sweetest part of this whole piece is there's a whole movement about when he met Julie and the day that she came to his loft and they had breakfast and hung out in the fire escape. So I had a very beautiful and sentimental moment. So, anyone that wants to get sweet on Michael, listen to the movement that he talks about meeting Julie in this piece. It's I wanted to call Julie and be like, your husband's so great. So it's pretty sweet. And Julie, hopefully someday there'll be a solo piece from her. She had started working on a solo piece for Evelyn Glennie a couple of years ago. And then Michael and I have been trying to get her to finish the piece for me. But she's all busy having won all these awards and stuff. So hopefully someday, but two or three times a year for the last couple of years, I've been bugging Julie about finish the piece, Julie. Yeah. So I'm on a mission.
Is it a multi-piece?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's for lots of metal stuff.
Yeah, keep bugging her. We need that.
Yeah, I know. I do and will.
Well, she'll certainly hear this podcast and now definitely do it.
Totally. She'll be well, you threw the gauntlet down in such a.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, learning XY was awesome and took forever. Yeah, just it was one of those pieces I learned in traffic, taking the polyrhythms and just sitting. I learned it a lot doing this on my steering wheel. There's also a piece I learned. I have to, of all people, to credit the way I play the piece, John Beck. I did a year of work at Eastman on a doctorate, sort of at this time when So Percussion was just kind of Jason and I, while we were going through when, Todd so rudely left us and Feeney so rudely left us. But I remember going unprepared to a John Beck lesson. And for anyone who's at Eastman knows, especially back in the day, you were never allowed to move drums from room to room. So the only room I could sign out for a lesson was this room with these big single-sided tom-toms. And the only piece I knew how to play was XY. So I was okay, we're going to do a lesson on 16-inch tom-toms on XY.
Was it 903?
Yeah, that's right. It was in 903. So I went into 903 with Mr. Beck. And but then he was just sounds like timpani. This is fantastic. You can really hear melodies come out. It's really nice if you tune the drums this way. And, I was it kind of just got me thinking about all the melodic aspects of the piece and totally changed it. Totally changed it in a way that I love and I know Michael loves. So of all people, it's actually John Beck who really put the piece on its head for me. Cool. And the tom-toms in 903. And then just another fun trivia thing. I remember actually the conversation I had the first time I played with Michael talking about timbre. It was when he was writing timbre. And he basically just decided I like XY, so I'm going to just trap myself in that idea. And can I write these ideas for a whole hour? So the idea of I'm going to make six wood blocks. I'm going to generate an hour material out of 6 6 pieces of wood, came at a time when he was like, I'm going to take that piece and I'm going to just wring it out till I can get every single idea out of it. And if I didn't love him before that conversation, at the end of it, I was just like, you're so cool. And then the other day, like, I wrote the biggest fanboy email to him on Friday night after I saw that piece.
Aw,
So I'm sweet on both of them.
that's awesome.
Do you still play it on big drums?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no. Like, it just brought me out of, like, I played on bongos and a travel conga, one of those Pearl travel congas, but just like bringing out the, like, trying to make it as in tune and as pitchy as possible, even on smaller drums. I think a lot of people play the piece just trying to wackadoo.
Yeah.
So I try to make it as melodic as one can.
Got it.
Schick actually talks about in his book, he says something like, I spend more time tuning drums on this piece than like any other, and he says like a lot of time with the conga wrench or something like that. But yeah, that's in there. And then I wanted to ask, because when I was a student at Illinois, there was a percussion quartet that did Dark Full Ride, but they only did it on like one of those like extra like composer concert things. They never actually did it on a percussion ensemble concert. So it seems like I barely saw this piece. I just saw the performance. I didn't see any of the rehearsals. And I thought it was like the coolest thing, and like I had literally forgotten about that piece until I was doing this research again. So I definitely want to pull it out. And Megan, you were saying that you had a group that did it at Interlochen. Could you tell us about that?
Well, actually, I shouldn't say that I had a group. It was Keith's group or Jeff's group or maybe their group together that did it. And it's in several movements, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of two. I think it's one thing, but a lot of people excerpt the cymbal hi-hat
Yeah,
part.
because when I saw it, I think they only did the cymbal part.
That's what they did.
It was Wynn's group at PASIC did it.
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
just that
that's
first
right.
section.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
that's
why
what
a
we
lot
did
of
also.
people think that.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier.
Really cool.
I got to play it in Lenny Kravitz's old apartment one time.
What?
It's like random, like living in New York gigs. Like there was some fundraiser thing. I think it was like the first time So ever played it. But at least as lore went, whatever weird apartment we played it in had belonged to Lenny Kravitz.
Wow.
Like, you have so many stories. It's ridiculous.
It's fun. That's why we all do this stuff. We all have good stories.
Well, Doug, speaking of your stories, this is a podcast, but you have something of a podcast also that you call 5 Days with Doug. I know I've listened to every episode, and Reed Polio wants to know, when is this thing coming back?
That's a great question. First, hats off to you guys for doing so many damn episodes.
It's hard, man. It's freaking hard.
It's really hard.
Yeah, prepare that what's the sound thing. It's a pain.
I would never even dare to like try to do something like what's the sound.
I've learned so much, though. Like, I would not be doing these things if I didn't have a weekly fire to do them under.
Yeah. It's like I'm literally impressed. Because, so I was trying to do bi-weekly podcasts for a while, and then I just died. Like, it's probably also helpful that you have a team to do your podcast, because I've just done the whole thing myself, and they're fun, but then like life happens. So this year I've done exactly no podcast. I have a bunch in the can. So I'm hoping once I relinquish myself of my chairmanship at the Boston Conservatory that I will get back to it. But yeah, my podcast grew out of, my dad used to always ask me, what am I going to do in 5 years? And I always resented the answer. Or resented the conversation, but it was nice to talk about like big plans. So I'm always talking about like, we should have a big plan for 5 years that we'll never do, but it's nice to have it out there. So originally I was going to ask people, I had this list of like questions about what you were doing this week. So tell me about what you did in the last 5 days, and then tell me what you're going to do in 5 years.
Oh.
And that's going to be the conversation. But my first ever, I don't even think I aired it. Like my first test podcast was Tim Feeney. And I sent him all the questions, and then when he sat down, I was like, so welcome. And he's like, why would you ever make someone do this? This is stupid. Why would, like, the whole podcast was like, you control freak. Why would you ask this many questions? Like, so he made me feel stupid. So then, it's fine. But so it just morphed into like talking to people about whatever in kind of a messy way. But I can't help myself as the son of a therapist from like going big, going long form. So I still feel okay about it. And I really hope to get back to it this summer.
Yeah, cool.
It's really fun. I enjoy it. And as you guys probably know, like I could practice a piece forever and do a great recording. Like I have this recording of this Hanstein vibe thing that is coming out. I bet this year 4 or 5 people will mention it to me. But if I release a podcast, I hear about it frequently and meaningfully from lots of people. So in some ways, I kind of want to like never record music again and just be a podcaster because it seems more effective.
Wow. That piece is amazing, by the way.
Yeah, and it's freaking killing me. It's back there.
I have a student playing the tinfoil movement and the bows. Yeah.
Yeah, it's downhill from that one. I mean, it's great, but it's like I feel so old playing that piece.
Challenging.
Well, and the other good reason to do podcasts is, of course, the money. Like the money's great.
Money is so sweet.
Yeah.
Sponsorships, the free trips.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. Hey, well, we have a question from Russell Eric on Facebook, and he wants to know how you see electronic music as it relates to percussion.
Oh, God. I don't know. I guess, I guess I just feel that electronic music is, I don't know if it relates to, it's just, it is the future. It is the present. Sometimes I talk about percussion hitting things, acoustic things, is that I'm a dinosaur these days. So the bigger question is how do electronics, it relates to percussion in the same way as it relates to everything else in our lives. And that it's just something we live with, and it's in the stream with us now, I think. So
I find myself explaining or trying to explain percussion and other modern music movements. I think a lot of times people think, oh, percussion is driving one of them. It's like, no, this is just another new movement. Like you share a piece of graphic notation with someone and they'll say like, oh, that's how percussion music is. It's like, no, that's just the part of the 20th century, you know? Or like, oh, look at all these polyrhythms. That's a percussion thing, right? It's like, no, that's just part of 20th century music. So when I saw that question, I thought, oh yeah, well, it's just, of course, they're two things that are happening in this century that are growing up together, you know?
Yeah, I think if anything, we as percussionists are early adopters and we're more comfortable with it. Actually, my big project I'm working on now is a piece for 50 violins and electronics by Tristan Parrish. He's writing this huge new piece that we're going to do at the Red Bull Academy in a couple months. It's going to be really great. It's already really fun. We had a workshop last weekend. But get a room full of violinists with cables running everywhere. They were like, what? This is crazy. What's going on? You know, they're still dealing with that question versus I think we're just living in the reality.
Yeah,
especially
sure.
such fancy as people as you that do what's the sound and then you filter your own voice. You're so
laser
fancy.
sounds.
That's right.
Yeah, man, that took a whole morning.
That's right.
So, Doug, real quick, you mentioned the Red Bull Academy. I think we have mentioned that one time. I was going to say it was the Josh Jones story, but I don't think it's that. It was something else.
We did mention it. I don't remember what.
I can't remember exactly what it was, but can you tell us what that is? It seems like I think it might have been the Josh Jones story. It was like it was also sponsored by Honda or something, where it was uncharted territory or something where they were talking, I don't know, something for musicians. Can you tell us about the Red Bull Academy? What this is?
I think basically it's just a series of performances and talks and things that will go on for 2 or 3 weeks in New York City. Well, that's the New York City edition of it. They just did they're always producing, festivals all over the place. I think they just did one in Europe a little bit ago. They're just, curating interesting music across genres that appeals to them. So I can tell you that I'm looking forward to going, and that I again, feeling like I'm hanging out with my son. I mostly have no idea who's there, but I know that people are really excited. So I feel like I'm attached to some event where I'm going to learn my face off just by going and checking out shows. And I'm pretty psyched to be there. And I mean, Tristan, I'm also really grateful for my friendship with Tristan because, he's got one hand very much in the art world, another hand in the music world that sort of we inhabit, another hand in, all this kind of working with people who are creating their own instruments and writing their own programming. Like when I hang out with him and his friends, I'm always humbled. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to be there.
Yeah, I always get really kind of, sometimes it's helpful when we hear of what we do crossing over to the mainstream, because sometimes the funding is so frustrating, and finding grants and kind of feeling like we're alone, and that the government's not helping us at all with our art. And so when you hear of big corporate sponsors like Red Bull or Honda picking up something, or So Percussion playing at Bonnaroo, I thought that was super cool. Things like that. It's kind of, it makes me hopeful sometimes.
Yeah, me too. It's like, anytime our crazy stuff gets out there, or like, and stuff that, like all the great stuff that John Luther Adams has given us all access to.
Yes.
Like the year that Inuksawit, was getting all of its, like, the year like our performance beat out the Met for like best performances in New York City, was like, ha, the drummers have taken over the opera. Yes. Like, it's so freaking exciting.
Yeah.
Like, so I that stuff gets me out of bed every day.
Yeah.
We did the snare drum quartet. I think it's part of a larger piece, but Dust into Dust.
Oh.
We did for our contemporary music festival here, just I guess the last contemporary music festival. And it was great talking to people after, because they either absolutely loved it or just couldn't stand it. It's great. No, but nobody was like, "Oh yeah, it's pretty cool."
Yeah, you could say that's a polarizing piece.
Aphasia is like that too, I find.
Oh yeah, I would say so. Yeah. Well, you guys, thanks so much. This was really fun. Doug Perkins, it's good to finally do this with you and see what's happening and check in with you.
Yeah, it's good to hang out with all of you. And here's to doing it IRL sometime soon. In case you come back to Boston, I'll show you the neighborhood.
Yeah, I'd love to see the new neighborhood. It sounds like it's really different.
Very different.
That's good. All right, man. All right, Ben, Megan, Laurel, and Justin Alexander. Thanks for listening in.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks again, Doug. We'll catch you guys on 139.
Sounds good.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.